Welcome back to Joe Duncan's Talk Show, episode number 5, I think. I've already lost count. How's that possible? Anyway, it's Friday, March 5th, 2021. Coming to you from the broom closet slash sound booth. I'm using my reflector today. If I look a little more light, that's why. It's because I got the reflector going on here. I'm using old friend Nikki Hayworth's opening credits from last week, that opening title sequence. I like it. Shout out to her. Shout out to Juan Camacho, for real this time. Not a drop in afterwards. Not an afterthought. You're not an afterthought, Juan. Shout out to Juan for drawing my head. It's not so much the rendition itself. It's the fact that it's small. My head doesn't fit places. And he managed to draw my head in a way, and Nikki put it in that thing, and it fit. Which, to me, that's science. Also, new theme music, new royalty-free theme music that's called Ratatouille's Kitchen by Carmen Marina and Edu Espinal. So major ups to them for that catchy theme. Wasn't that fun? Weren't you just bopping around watching that? Didn't it make you want to just jump right into your phone? Our guest today is Lorin Salm. He's a mime. And I had the hardest time with the title card that you saw a moment ago. At first I wrote professional mime Lorin Salm, but that's ridiculous. Of course he's a professional mime. No one calls themselves by their vocation with amateur being implied. I mean, duh. So you don't have to delineate. Of course he's a professional mime. And then I thought mime Lorin Salm, and that just seemed so short and reductive and weird. It sounded like he's a poet or something, which in a way he is. But he's a mime, and that's not a clown. That's a mime. Two different things. So, spend some more time on Google there, Henry. Maybe learn a few things. Jeez. And this is the part where I do not apologize for the lousy editing, so I won't. And I guess that's it. I think that's it. I hope you enjoy it. You know what? Yeah, of course I hope you enjoy it. Why do I say that? No, I hope you have a miserable 42 minutes sitting here while you fold laundry or something. No, duh. Anyway, please like, subscribe, and share. I rely on that. I got a story about that I won't bore you with. I said wow a lot again in this interview. Again, if you want to make a drinking game out of it, wow. I actually edited out a few wows. There was a lot of wow. And enjoy. You are literally the only mime I've ever met.
That's I don't know if I should be surprised by that or not. There are more of us around than you think, but I'm not completely surprised.
Well, now why would there be any surprise to that? Because am I just traveling in the wrong circles, or are there actually a lot of mimes in Los Angeles?
I wouldn't say there are a lot in Los Angeles. Again, probably more than you'd think. I know a lot of the people who do mime, but I also, will show up at a commercial audition sometimes for a mime role, and there are a bunch of people there that I've never seen before auditioning for a mime role. So I suspect there are more, and I don't know how many of those are, full-time professional mimes, but I suspect there are some mimes out there that who even I don't know.
How many? What's the greatest number of people at a mime audition have you ever seen?
Oh, I mean, I've seen 20 people in the room at one time, and that's not counting whoever was there before and after me. I mean, at a mime audition, there will be people who are professional mimes, and there will be actors that have white makeup at home. So there's a range.
And can you tell right away?
When I see someone performing mime, I get a pretty good sense of what their level of training and experience is based on watching them, on watching what they're doing.
But sitting in the room, can you tell, oh, that's just an actor trying to steal a mime gig from, guys who know what they're doing?
Sometimes I get that sense from people. And honestly, some of it comes from just looking at the way they put their makeup on. Sometimes that's a dead giveaway.
I would think. Let's get to the beginnings here. We know each other from recurring theme, everybody. I know my guests from somewhere. Cal State Northridge years ago.
And
And you were a theater major at Cal State Northridge at the time, correct?
Yes.
Did you have an interest in mime at that time?
I did. I had already been doing mime since I was about 13 years old.
All right, cool. Now, did the theater department, did they acknowledge this skill? Did you learn more about mime at this school? It doesn't seem like they were too mime intensive.
No, actually, I didn't learn any mime in the theater department there. They didn't have any mime instruction, even on at those times when they had movement courses. It's possible there was some mime component to some of their movement courses, but it was not very present in that department, which is not terribly unusual for a university theater department.
I would think that's not an enormous part of the curriculum. What now? When you were 13, you discovered mime. What was it at 13 that made you say, "I got to do this"?
Well, I actually discovered it even earlier than that. I grew up watching a TV show called The Shields and Yarnell Show. Robert Shields and Lorin Yarnell were probably the two most famous American mimes of the 20th century, maybe ever.
This was an actual network television show in the 70s.
It was.
I remember it.
At a time when variety shows were popular on American TV, they had a variety show. A lot of it was mime sketches, but they also did comedy, verbal comedy. They had dance. They had all kinds of different types of acts, but it was centered around mime performance. So I grew up watching them and imitating them, and also knowing who Marcel Marceau was. Marcel Marceau, the world's most famous mime ever. I grew up at a time when everybody knew who he was. He was so famous that I don't even remember how I knew who he was. I just knew because everybody knew.
Same here. And now, when you first did it, you remember some of the early lessons that you had?
I remember some of them. I mean, in short classes, usually it goes very quickly to technique. And because one of the things mime is known for is creating the illusion of invisible things, a lot of what we did concentrated on that. But fortunately, we had enough time, we were able to create characters and scenes. And it wasn't all solo performer mime either. We did group mime scenes. And I was really happy to have been introduced to ensemble mime performance right from the beginning, because some people never even think of mime as being something with multiple actors.
Now, when you do ensemble mime, is it improvised or is it scripted, or do they have both?
I suppose it can be both, but all of the group mime that I've ever seen has been rehearsed, choreographed, like any other theater work.
I know mimes have characters that they do. They don't just generically do mime. There's a character it's based on. Do you have a set character that you use in a lot of things or in all things, or does that vary from project to project?
It varies from project to project. There are some mime performers who create a character that they use over and over, where they create multiple mime pieces featuring that same character. It becomes like a signature character for them, the way that Marcel Marceau had Bip, and you saw all these different adventures with Bip. I haven't created a character like that for myself. So in each mime piece that I do, the character is different. The character is created for that particular mime piece.
So now you studied mime when you were 13 and you went to college, and then at a certain point you said, I'm going to go deeper on this. Where did you go to find higher level instruction on mime?
Well, I'd been once I took that first class, and I realized mime was something I was really interested in. Every time I took another drama workshop and they were offering mime, I studied it. So I'd been, and then I went in junior high school. I went to a performing arts magnet school where I had a chance to learn and do mime. So I kept learning it as much as I possibly could as I went along. And then while I was doing my theater studies in college, I found out that Marcel Marceau was teaching summer workshops in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Of all
He,
places.
yeah, it seems very random, but he had a relationship with the University of Michigan. So he was teaching these seminars in Ann Arbor. He had already been doing it for 5 years before I heard about it. And so when I heard, I signed up and I went and I took a 3-week seminar with him and with former students of his school. And that was when my eyes were really open to what you could do with mime. Um,
Wow. I mean, he was the man. I mean, he's the Babe Ruth, the Wayne Gretzky, the Muhammad Ali of mime. There was none bigger by far. So, yeah.
right.
And yeah, you were how old when you first met him?
I was 20
Wow. That's
and
cool.
very intimidated. I almost didn't go because even though I've been doing mime for about 7 years already, I thought I don't know enough to study with Marcel Marceau. I didn't think I was qualified to go there, but
But well,
I
isn't it
went there
interesting that
anyway.
we do that to ourselves because you were going there as a student and you still said, I don't know if I'm qualified.
Yeah, well, I just naturally assumed someone of his stature would only teach people that had already achieved a certain level of training, that he wouldn't be teaching complete beginner, well, relative beginners like me. And as it turns out, I was considered a beginner at that seminar. So most of my instruction came from former students of his. And I had a pretty limited amount of, I got to audit his classes with the more advanced students every day. And I had a couple of classes directly with him. But most of my instruction actually came from the other instructors
Wow. But
during that
still,
time.
you got to show up and good on you for showing up because that's how you get better. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
and that was I mean, what I learned there completely um, changed my view of what you could do with mime, and it's what made me want to go to his school and study with him full time, which is what I eventually did.
what kinds of things did you learn? What kind of things had you already learned and preconceived notions about mime did you have going in? And then those were shattered when you went to study with him for a few weeks. If you can talk in layman's terms about it.
Well, for me, I guess I had learned the way I learned mime was not too far away from the cliche things or those things that most people think of when they think of mime. They think of you think of nonverbal performance, acting without speaking, using your body, using facial expression, creating the illusion of things instead of using real objects, creating the illusion of objects, creating the illusion of other characters around you when you perform by yourself, creating the illusion of an environment, which it turns out you don't have to do. You can use real objects, but that's one of the things that mime is known for. And that allows you great freedom to create anything you want out of the completely invisible. In mime, we call it making the invisible visible. Um, so that was primarily what I knew. And when I went to that seminar, I learned that it goes much deeper than that. It's also about expressing what's inside your character, expressing who the character is, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. Many things that any actor would want to express, but in this case, doing it with the body, primarily or entirely with the body. Um, and many other things. I mean, I could take up our whole time just talking about all the things I learned in those 3 weeks that I studied with Marceau at the seminar. There were mind techniques I'd never even heard of before. There's this entire mime technique called corporeal mime, which was created by Marceau's teacher, Etienne Decroux. And I'd never even heard of corporeal mime. So, and it's something that takes years to learn. So I got to learn 3 weeks of it.
Can you give a summary of what corporeal mime is?
Um, it's hard to summarize. It's on the one hand, it's a technique that allows the actor to understand how to use the body, um, how to move, how the body can be moved, how to master that movement, what you can express with the different kinds of movements you can make. And then another whole side of it is a dramatic philosophy about what choices you would make as a mime actor in how to express whatever it is you want to express.
You know, you say the word choices. Now, this reminds me of theater because you know from studying acting that you don't just recite the words from the script. You have to make a choice as far as you know, movement and you know resonance, how you connect with the other person, how you connect with the space around you, uh, inflections, and so on. So, is there some overlap between what you learned as an actor and what you learned as a mime?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that, if I didn't know it already, when I went to study with Marceau, something that was reinforced is that mime is acting. It's not just, and that's one of the big misconceptions about it, is that I think a lot of people focus on the technique. There is a technique involved that you have to master, but it's also acting. You have to be there. Mr. Marceau often referred to some people he would see that had mastered the technique or were very good at the technique, but were lacking the acting part, probably because they had just never learned it. So then it becomes more of an exhibition of cool looking technique. But without the acting behind it, you don't connect with the audience in the way that you do as an actor. It's hard to move an audience emotionally um, unless you're a good actor along with the technique.
That all makes perfect sense. Yep, that's what I was going for, and that it adds up too. Now, talk about after all of the training you had. At what point did you start to turn this into a career, into a livelihood?
Well, really, as soon as I got back, when I went to study with Marceau, it was at his school in Paris, and I was there for 3 years. So one of the number one question I got when I was preparing to go to the school from everybody I knew was, okay, you're going to go and study mime for 3 years in France, and then what?
Isn't it funny
Um,
they ask you that, but they don't ask people who major in art history.
yeah, yeah, I guess there's a much more, I guess art history has a more clearer career path than mine.
Yeah,
Um,
there's plenty of obscure majors where they spend 100 grand on getting their master's and then they go off and do something that has nothing to do with it. So it's funny how you got picked on for that, but continue.
yeah, well, and I imagine there are people go and study mime and then come out of it and find that they need to do something else because they can't make a career out of it. It's definitely not an easy thing to pursue. But my answer to that question at the time was I don't really know. I just feel like if I put this much time into studying an art, a craft, there must be something I can do with it. And one of the first things I did to make a career out of it when I got back from Paris was not to try and make a career out of it as a performer, but as a teacher. Even though I fully intended to be a mime performer as well, I thought one of the it may be it may be easier to start making money at it more quickly by teaching other people what I've learned. Um, and I started coming up with ways that I could teach it. And one of the things that occurred to me over time was that mime was not only good for mime was good for a lot of things. And I could teach mime skills to people in other arts, um, and that could benefit from what I learned about mime. So
Which
oh,
oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've noticed this. It leads me to my next question about your resume, which is quite impressive. On your website, you list a lot of people you've trained, a lot of organizations you've worked with. Um, what, for example, you trained Damon Wayans.
yes.
Now, what did you train Damon Wayans?
He came to me at a time when he had been doing television for a long time steadily. He had a show he'd been doing, and he wanted to get back into doing live stand-up comedy, which he had done before. But in getting back into it, he decided he wanted to try and be more physical in his stand-up. He wanted to use his body more. And he told me one of his idols was Richard Pryor, who he really admired for his physicality. So he decided, I'm not sure how he concluded that he needed to study with a mime teacher, but he did, and he found me. And I worked with him for several months, just one-on-one, showing him some general concepts about using your body expressively, some things that come from mime, and then working on his stand-up, and working with him on making suggestions about how we can make it more physical.
Oh, that's terrific. And was he a
He
good
was great to
student?
work with. Yeah, he was great to work with. Very nice guy. Um, he was great to work with. Some of the things, um, some of his way of working involved having me improvise things rather than him improvising things. And other times I would, he was the one standing up there and I was making suggestions for what he could do. So there's a lot of back and forth trying different things out. Um, and I don't remember if he was the first stand-up comic I had worked with. I may have worked with some others, but he was certainly the biggest stand-up comic, which is always a little intimidating. But once we started and got into the groove, then it was a very easy relationship.
Yeah, I noticed also from your website, you've worked with a lot of acting organizations, theater groups, and even Cirque du Soleil. So they contact you for mime technique to help with the shows that they're putting on?
I actually was I ended up working with Cirque du Soleil through one of their performers who came to study with me privately. He took some mime lessons with me privately, and he said, this is great stuff, and I think everyone in our show would benefit from learning this. So he helped connect me with the artistic director of his show, and they brought me in to do a workshop for them. And then I ended up doing, and this is something that's been ongoing for years now, where I do short-term workshops for the cast members of their different shows.
Because I've seen a couple of Cirque shows, and I mean, the physical demands are tremendous. But if we can go deep in the weeds here for a second, I'd like to know what kinds of things would you teach a Cirque du Soleil performer? Is it about what Mr. Marceau taught you about connecting with what they're doing, or is it more physicality and technique-oriented things? What sort of things would you teach them?
Well, it it really depends. With some of the artists there, I've done workshops on general technique. I may have only a couple of hours or a few hours to work with a group, so I can't get too deeply into the nuances of things. So I found some foundational mime techniques that I feel can benefit any performer who uses their body on stage, which is any performer. Um, and and because in these Cirque workshops, I have a whole variety of different kinds of performers, because within one Cirque show, you have acrobats, clowns, uh, actors, jugglers, all different kinds of artists. I would teach techniques that I felt they could all use that would enhance their physical performance. Um, there are other Cirque shows I've worked with where they had me work in smaller groups or one-on-one with particular artists in the show, and there we could get into their particular character that they're playing in the show and how they can use their body to convey that character.
Wow, this sounds very deep.
It is. It gets really interesting. They have a lot of interesting characters and a lot of interesting acts in their shows. Um, and to compare that a little to working with Damon Wayans, working with Cirque du Soleil for the first time was very intimidating, because I go to work with these world-class artists, and in the back of my head I'm thinking, what can I teach them that they don't already know?
Mhm.
But the thing about mime is it doesn't matter what else you've studied or how good you are at it. If you've never studied mime, you've never studied mime. It's different than other physical art forms. So the techniques and the approach to movement that I brought to these performers that are already the best in the world at what they do was a different way of looking at movement than they've experienced in their training before. So maybe I introduced some entirely new concepts to them, and in other ways I got them to look at their movement that they're already very good at in a different way.
That's really interesting. And that, especially people of that level who've been performing for a long time, I presume, in order to reach a Cirque show, how receptive were they to the realization, oh my gosh, I haven't been using my body to my maximum potential?
Well, actually, they were very excited about it. I mean, they came into the workshop very humble, very open to what we were going to do. I mean, some of them were a completely blank slate. They had no impression of mime, so they didn't even have an expectation of what I might teach them. Um, and also knowing once I got past the first show, knowing I had worked with other Cirque shows, gave them some confidence that I was going to show them something worthwhile because they knew I'd been brought back to do this again. Um, I think the first time I worked with a show, I think the clowns were probably the ones that I had to win over, because I think
Story of
that
my life, Lorin.
I know it isn't always the clowns. Yeah, no, I think the clowns might have seen mime as something close enough to what they do that they probably felt like there wasn't much I could show them that they didn't already know. But I mean, if you ask anyone who is a professional mime and ask anyone who's a professional clown how close mime and clown are to each other, they'll be the first ones to tell you they're two different art forms. And certainly they share many things, but they're not the same thing. So as we went along, I think the clowns started to see that what I was showing them was also new. It was a different way of looking at what they do. Maybe not as different as it was for some of these other performers, many of whom are closer to athletes than actors, or were when they came into Cirque du Soleil. Um, but eventually the clowns were won over by what I was teaching them as well, and they ended up really liking it
Well,
as
that's
well.
a skill, winning over the clowns. You also did some work for Walt Disney Feature Animation. Can I ask about that?
Yeah, that was the first thing I did when I got back from Paris, actually, to try teaching. Someone had planted this seed in my head before I went to Paris. They said, I've heard that Disney sometimes brings in mimes to work with them. And that was all they knew. I had no idea what they brought in mimes to do. But I remember that, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna do a little self-study course on animation and see if I can figure out what concepts from mime might be interesting to animators. And I realized, I mean, an animator in a way is kind of like a mime because you have a voice actor that provides the voice for an animated character, and the animator takes care of everything else, everything that's nonverbal about the character's performance. So they have to be an expert at how a character expresses themselves with the body. So I went with that, and I chose certain concepts from mime that I thought would be helpful to animators. And I created a workshop. I talked someone at Disney into giving me a chance. They decided to bring me in for a series of 4 workshops. And I taught these animators, and the feedback was fantastic. They said, again, kind of like with Cirque, there were some things in there that were completely new to them that animators don't traditionally learn in an animation program. And other things gave them a different way of looking at some of the things that they already do.
Yeah, I've never even thought of that, but you're right. They have to figure out how a person, a character would move without using words. So it makes perfect sense that there's some overlap. Now, can you tell when you watch cartoons the style among the animators, if they have a better sense of body movement or better sense of mime just on the way their characters move? Am I making sense?
Um, I guess it kind of depends what I'm watching. Feature film animation involves a lot more time. They have a much longer schedule to work with, and they can take the time to put more into the character movement than, say, in an episodic animated TV show where they have to work much more quickly. They have to really simplify things. So the movement is not as detailed. They really, but nevertheless, they really have to get to the essence of it. They have to, in a few simple postures and movements of the body, they have to be able to express whatever they need to express.
You talk about it, just hearing you talk about it, that does make sense, because you watch some of these Disney features and the animation it's amazingly detailed. I mean, I'm not even an expert on animated movies, but you can tell a difference. There is so much going on with the characters and their movement. So what you're saying makes perfect sense, especially like the amount of time that they have, and as far as getting detailed on these things. Can you say which films have the Lorin Salm signature on them?
Not really, because um, I a lot of the animation teaching I've done has been, um, I guess, what I would call general concept teaching, where, like I said, I created this series of workshops covering all these different concepts that I teach them so that they can apply them however they find they want to or need to. What I've done less of, even though sometimes I've worked with the animators from a particular film rather than a mixed group of animators at a studio who are working on different productions. When I've worked on a particular film, I haven't gotten to get so much into the nitty gritty of a particular character or a particular scene, with a few exceptions, like on Chicken Little, Disney's first fully CGI film. I got a little into certain characters and certain scenes with a few of the animators, but much of the work was more on these general skills. And with some of the other films, like I worked with on the original Shrek as well. I worked with that group of animators that were all from Shrek, but it was, with them, it was more on the general things. Um, you know, like with animators, I teach people whose art form is something different than mine. So, and since I can't be an expert in all of these different art forms, some of what I do is to try and identify techniques or concepts that I think they might be able to use. But a lot of what I do, I mean, beyond that, a lot of the work is up to them. I teach them something I think might be useful, and then it's up to them to figure out how to apply it. So that's why I can't look at one of these films I worked on and said, yes, they did that. That character did that thing because they learned that from me.
Well, you know what? I think if you were in a bar and you said that, nobody would question it. I would just say it. Come on, man, brag a little bit. And speaking of bragging, not only as a teacher, but as a performer, you have a lengthy resume. Here we go.
The first thing is my mime performance on stage. These are some of the theatrical mime creations I've done. Those clips were from an actual performance that I did in Los Angeles. This is from Nip Tuck, that I also coach one of the actors. Screen right, or to my left in the screen, that's John Hensley, and he had a storyline where his character decides he wants to become a mime performer, and because his character is someone who always seemed to get into trouble one way or another, he ended up robbing a store while he was in his mime costume. And then he ended up committing a series of these robberies while dressed as a mime. So eventually the police rounded up all the mimes they could find and put us in a lineup for one of the witnesses to pick out. So I got to, so I was hired to coach John actually for the show. And then I ended up being one of the mimes in the lineup as well.
Brilliant. And am I seeing things, or is this Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg?
That is them. That's them on their VH1 show together. They have guests and they cook food, and they had one episode with a French theme. So naturally, when you're cooking French food, you need to have French mimes. So that's how I ended up there.
What did you do? Did you just sort of improvise your way through, or did you help cook, or how did this go?
It was completely improvisation. They had me, and there was one other mime there as well on the set with us, and we did a couple of prepared things. You know, we mimed opening a door when Snoop and Martha entered, and almost the rest of it was just improvising, just reacting to what they were doing
Well, that
throughout
sounds
the
like
show.
fun. What a cool gig.
It was kind of fun. It was great being there with Martha and Snoop. And while we were on the set, you know, when the camera wasn't rolling, Snoop got into improvising some mime with me backstage. So that was kind of fun.
That's nice to know he's a cool cat.
Yeah, he was. This is a Geico commercial I did just not long ago, just about a year ago. This particular footage is from a research project I did in Australia at the Queensland University of Technology. I took part in this motion capture, actually two PhD research projects where they were studying different aspects of using motion capture for animated character movement. And I'd worked with the instructor in Los Angeles. He would bring groups of animation students to Los Angeles, and I taught them my animation workshops. So then he brought me to Australia to work with the PhD students on some of the motion capture study.
Wow. And now here you are with who
is
that?
Zombies.
You're teaching motion movement to zombies.
To zombies, yes. I do movement coaching, character movement coaching, and mime coaching for film and TV projects. And there were not just one, but two different zombie films that I was hired to create the way that the zombies would move and to coach the actors in how to do that movement. So this is me on the set coaching some of the actors that played the zombies.
Now, when you do something like this, does the director give you directions saying, I want to achieve this feeling, or I want to evoke this, or do they just give you carte blanche to say, how would a zombie move? Figure it out. I mean, how do you approach something like this?
It depends on the director. On these two films, one of them, for this one that you're seeing clips from, the main thing was the director knew that he didn't want the zombies to move in the cliche way that you used to see zombies move. You know, he didn't want them all holding their arms out, kind of mindlessly walking along like that. He wanted something different. So I read the script, and I mean, one of the things about zombie movies is that the people became zombies for some reason, and that reason is different in almost every zombie movie. So I thought, why not create movement that is related to why they are zombies in this film? And that was what I did. And it ended up being something unique. Like, one of the things I'm showing the actors here is don't have your arms in front of you. They always need to be down at your sides, because that was the movement I created for that film. And then the other zombie film I did, that director had some more clear ideas about what he wanted the zombies to do, but then he still relied on me to figure out how that was going to translate into their movement.
Wow. Wow, that's fantastic. And relying again on your theatrical background, because that's what actors do. They look at the text and they say, what would my character do?
Yes, exactly. And a lot of the projects I do the coaching for, I get to play zombie. That's me in a zombie outfit a little before my makeup was on. And here's me in some zombie makeup, actually. So I often get to act on screen in some of the things I coach for.
That's cool. Cirque du Soleil, rock star.
Yeah, that was with O, and the previous one was with the cast of The Beatles' Love. And this is me on the O stage in Las Vegas, working with them.
Wow. And they were all very receptive, you said. So far out. Wow,
Yeah,
excellent work, man. Just you quite a career. I mean, did you think do you ever stop and look back and go, wow, I've actually accomplished a hell of a lot here?
I, yeah, I'm aware. I mean, if for no other reason, because I have when I go to put together a video reel like that, and I look at all the different things that I've worked on, and have to. I mean, honestly, it was hard to put together a reel that short, because in all the years I've been doing this for more than 20. Yeah, and I mean, that's not to, to brag. I'm
No,
just saying
I need to pull some more
I've been doing
bragging
this
out of you,
for
Lauren. You need to brag. That's pretty. This is rock star stuff, man.
well, I've been doing it for many years now, and I've managed to do a lot of different projects, not only as a performer. I mean, as a performer, you accumulate footage of many things you've done, but I've also done a lot of teaching work as well. I've managed to, and because a lot of the teaching I do is short term, I do workshops, or I work on a film production or a TV show. Because a lot of it is short term, I end up accumulating a long resume of many different things that I've worked on, because it's not like I work on something for a whole year usually. Um, it's a lot of shorter projects. So yeah, I've ended up doing a lot of different things, and that's what, for me, that's one of the things that makes my job interesting.
Oh, I would
I'm the
think.
kind of person that likes to work in one place, in the same place every day. I
Well,
like
yeah,
to do something different all the
you
time.
clearly. I mean, you've got worked on a whole bunch of different things. So good on you, man. Where can people find you?
Well, one place, especially if they're interested in learning mime, I teach mime classes in person in Los Angeles in normal times when it's okay to take an in-person class. I do that. And right now, things being the way they are, I'm teaching online classes. So now I'm teaching people not only in Los Angeles, but all over the country and North America, and maybe beyond. Um, so my school is called Mime Theater Studio, and I spell theater with an R-E rather than an ER. So if you
Oh
look
yeah,
up,
you've earned it, man. Come on.
yes, the theater. Yeah, so it's mimetheaterstudio.com. And if you look up Mime Theater Studio on any social platforms, Facebook, Twitter, you'll find Mime Theater Studio there. Or in some places, I'm at Mime Studio, but it's probably easier just to look up Mime Theater Studio. Honestly, though, if you go to a search engine and type in mime classes, probably the thing at the top of the list will be Mime Theater Studio.
Of course it will. Because look at you, you're a badass. I mean, look, you've worked with everyone. You've been around the world, studied with Marcel Marceau, been to Australia, motion capture, Cirque du Soleil, Disney animation. My God, that's an impressive resume. Lorin Salm, thank you so much for spending time and telling us all about the world of mime, because I have learned way more about mime than I'd ever known before. Thank you very much, man.
Well, thank you, Joe. It's always fun to talk about it. Thanks for having me as a guest.
You're welcome. There you have it. Lorin Salm, professional mime. Great guy. I think he should boast a little more. As I told him, the guy's a rock star. I mean, look at that. Marcel Marceau. How many people do you know who studied with Marcel Marceau? He's the only guy I know who's ever done that. Thank you again, Lorin. Thank all of you for watching to this part. Please like, subscribe, and share. I need it. I really need it. You know, there was a person I met on Facebook who sent me a link to like two of her pages, which I did right away. And then I said to her by instant message, hey, as long as we're cross promoting, can you please subscribe to my YouTube page? And she said, sure. And she still hasn't. Like, what? Seriously? I mean, I feel bad even talking about it. I'm going to edit this part out.